Have you ever seen yourself in a situation where you felt something was wrong after interacting with someone, but couldn't identify exactly why? Sometimes we deal with people whose subtle attitudes can have a profound negative impact on our emotional health. This discomfort can be the result of toxic behaviors that go unnoticed or are confused with normal. The good news is that by learning to recognize them, you gain the power to protect your energy and maintain healthier relationships. In this video, we will explore 7 signals indicate that you may be dealing with a bad or toxic person. These signs go beyond traditional and include nuances that often escape our initial perception. In addition, we will present practical solutions based on Stoic philosophy, which teaches us how to focus on what is under our control and accept what we cannot change. By applying these principles to our daily interactions, we gain clarity to identify harmful behaviors and strength to react in a balanced and assertive way. Modern life constantly puts us in the face of interpersonal challenges. Toxic relationships not only increase stress, but also compromise our ability to make clear and rational decisions. However, Stoicism offers powerful tools to turn these obstacles into opportunities for personal growth. At the end of this video, you will have concrete strategies to protect your emotional energy, set healthy limits, and deal with difficult and resilient people. If you are ready to take this important step towards self-knowledge and emotional harmony, continue with us. Let us find out how to identify these subtle signs and use the Stoic wisdom to face them with serenity. Before we dive into the 7 signals that indicate that you may be dealing with a bad or toxic person, it is essential to understand the philosophical background that will guide our discussion. Stoicism. This ancient philosophy, developed in classical Greece and later refined by thinkers such as Seneca, Epicteto, and Marco Aurelio, offers powerful principles to face emotional challenges and difficult relationships. The core of Stoicism lies in the idea of control. According to this view, everything in life can be divided into 2 categories: what is under our control and what is not. The actions, thoughts, and emotions of others, as well as external events, are out of our direct reach. However, as we react to these situations and choose to deal with them, are completely under our control. This principle is fundamental to transform toxic interactions into opportunities for personal growth. A practical example: imagine that you are dealing with someone who constantly criticizes your decisions. Instead of being critically shaken or trying to change that person's opinion, something that is out of control, you can focus on how you respond internally. Stoicism teaches us that our reactions are shaped by the perceptions we create about situations. By adjusting these perceptions, we can preserve our inner peace and prevent others' behaviors from affecting us deeply. Another central concept of Stoicism is the love of destiny. Love. This does not mean passively accepting negative situations, but to see them as opportunities for learning and strengthening. When we identify a toxic person in our lives, we can face it as a test of our resilience, assertiveness, and self-confidence. Each interpersonal challenge is a chance to practice these virtues and evolve as an individual. In addition, Stoicism reminds us of the importance of living according to our values. Whether establishing clear limits or responding calmly and assertively, we must act aligned with what we consider right. This creates a sense of authenticity and purpose, even in the midst of adverse circumstances. Finally, it is noteworthy that Stoicism does not preach indifference or impassivity. On the contrary, it encourages a balanced and rational response to situations. By applying these principles, you will be equipped to recognize harmful behaviors and deal with them in a practical and effective way. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the coming minutes, when we will reveal the 7 signals that indicate that you may be dealing with a bad or toxic person. First sign, false kindness. One of the most subtle ways in which a bad person can negatively impact his life is through false kindness. This behavior may seem harmless at first glance, but is deeply rooted in emotional manipulation. People who display false kindness are often generous or friendly only when there is something to gain, be a favor, recognition, or control over you. A common example of this pattern occurs in the workplace. Imagine a colleague who always offers help, but only when it brings you some benefit. He can say things like, "Of course, I can help with it," but then implicitly charges for this support, creating a sense of emotional debt. This dynamic can make you feel pressured to repay, even if it goes against your interests or limits. Stoicism teaches us to look beyond appearances and focus on what really matters, the intention behind the actions. In this case, by identifying false kindness, we can choose how to respond in a balanced way. Instead of passively accepting or confronting aggressively, it suggests an assertive approach. Answer calmly but firmly. "I appreciate your offer, but I prefer to solve it alone." This shows that you recognize kindness, but do not allow it to be used as a handling tool. Remember that your decision should be aligned with your values, regardless of the other's reaction. By applying this Stoic perspective, you protect your emotional autonomy and avoid being dragged to harmful dynamics. And sign, emotional exploration. The behavior that may indicate that you are dealing with a bad person is emotional exploitation. This type of person has a peculiar talent to identify their vulnerabilities and use them as a pressure point. She knows exactly which buttons tighten to control her reaction or manipulate her emotions for her benefit. Imagine, for example, someone who constantly brings out trauma or personal fears to get advantage in a discussion. Phrases like, "You were always very insecure about it, didn't you?" Or, "If I really loved me, I wouldn't have done that." They are typical tools of this pattern. This approach creates an unbalanced dynamic, where you feel pressured to give in even when you know this is not fair or healthy. Stoicism offers us a powerful weapon against this type of exploitation, the ability to recognize that we are responsible only for our own emotions. Instead of allowing someone else to control your mind through vulnerabilities, you can protect your inner peace by focusing on what is under your control. A practical answer would be to say something like, "I understand that you have concerns, but I won't allow you to use my past experiences to manipulate me. Also, remember that your emotions are valid, regardless of what others may think." Practicing self-pity is essential here. Recognize that everyone has weaknesses and that no one should explore them to obtain power. If you realize that this person insists on exploring his weaknesses, carefully evaluate the space he occupies in his life. Healthy relationships are built on mutual trust, not emotional control. Applying these Stoic principles will strengthen your resilience and autonomy, allowing you to face difficult situations without losing your emotional integrity. Third sign, control by emotional rewards. A frequently neglected behavior in toxic relationships is control by emotional rewards. This pattern occurs when someone uses compliments, affection, or support only as a way to manipulate you to do something in return. Although initially it may seem like a genuine gesture, this type of person is usually calculating, offering rewards only when there is a personal benefit involved. Imagine a co-worker who constantly praises you during meetings, but whenever it happens, he asks for some favor. Phrases like, "You're amazing about it," "I think only you can solve this situation." They can sound as recognition, but they are actually strategies to make sure you feel obliged to help. This cycle creates emotional dependence and pressures you to give in, even when it compromises your own interests. Stoicism teaches us to look beyond appearances and focus on the intention behind actions. Instead of passively accepting these rewards, ask yourself, is this person being genuine or trying to influence me? A practical answer would be to say something like, I appreciate your recognition, but I prefer to evaluate my priorities before taking on new responsibilities. This shows that you value compliment, but will not be manipulated by it. Also remember that your self-esteem must come from within, not external validation. Healthy people offer support without expecting anything in return. If you realize that this dynamic persists, reflect on the space that this person occupies in his life. Balanced relationships are built in genuine reciprocity, not in emotional transactions. By applying these Stoic principles, you strengthen your emotional autonomy and avoid being dragged by unrealistic expectations. Your energy must be invested in who really deserves it. Sign: lack of personal responsibility. Behavior that may indicate a bad person is lack of personal responsibility. This type of individual, constantly deflecting the blame for others, refusing to assume any responsibility for his own mistakes or failures. Instead of recognizing its imperfections, it projects external faults, creating an environment of defensiveness and resentment. Imagine a situation where something goes wrong in a collective project. The toxic person immediately points fingers, saying phrases like, "You should have done it before," or "if so and so had acted correctly, none of this would have happened." This approach prevents problems from being solved constructively, as energy is concentrated in blaming rather than seeking solutions. Stoicism teaches us that focusing on what is under our control, in this case our own reaction, is fundamental. Instead of getting involved in the dynamics of accusations, you can answer in a balanced way, "I understand your point, but here we have a solution." This demonstrates emotional maturity and encourages the other to reflect on his posture. Also, remember that everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect. What differentiates healthy relationships is the willingness of both sides in taking responsibility and learning from errors. If you realize that this lack of responsibility persists, carefully evaluate the impact of this person on your life. Balanced relationships are based on mutual honesty and constructive self-criticism. By applying these Stoic principles, you strengthen your ability to deal with people who avoid taking responsibility without allowing them to affect your inner peace. Your assertive and rational response may even inspire positive changes in the other's behavior. Sign: constant over-exigence behavior. That may indicate a bad person is constant over-exigence, characterized by the incessant pursuit of perfection in themselves or others. This type of individual often points out failures, criticizes minimal details, and hardly recognizes efforts or progress. Superexigence can be disguised as high standard, but actually reflects an emotional control pattern that harms both those who are around them. Imagine a work environment where a colleague or boss never seems to be satisfied, no matter how well you perform your tasks. Phrases like, "This could have been better," or "You always make mistakes here," they are common. This dynamic creates a climate of constant pressure, undermining your self-confidence and constantly waiting for disapproval. Stoicism offers a valuable perspective to deal with this situation. Accept imperfection as a natural part of life. No one is infallible, and trying to meet someone else's unrealistic expectations only leads to emotional exhaustion. Instead of internalizing these criticisms, focus on what is under your control, your own reaction. A practical answer would be to say something like, "I understand your point, but I believe I did my best within the circumstances." Also, practice gratitude. Recognize your own advances and celebrate small victories. This strengthens your emotional resilience and reduces the impact of external criticism. If you realize that this pattern persists, evaluate carefully if it is worth continuing in this relationship. Healthy relationships are built in reciprocity and mutual recognition, not constant criticism. By applying these Stoic principles, you protect your emotional energy and avoid being dragged by irrational expectations. Your inner peace depends on how you choose to react, not the demands of others. Sign: silent handling. A less evident but equally harmful behavior is silent manipulation. This type of person uses silence as a powerful weapon to control, punish, or emotionally manipulate. Instead of expressing her frustrations directly, she chooses to purposely ignore or be absent from interactions, creating an emotional vacuum that can be exhausting to those around her. Imagine a situation where you do something that this person interprets as wrong, even if it was not his intention. Instead of discussing the problem openly, she chooses to be silent, avoiding communication and leaving you in doubt about what happened. Phrases like, "I don't want to talk about it now," or simply a prolonged absence without explanation are examples of this pattern. This dynamic generates uncertainty and anxiety, forcing you to constantly question your own acts. Stoicism teaches us that our inner peace should not depend on the behavior of others. Instead of internalizing this silence as a form of punishment, focus on maintaining communication open and clear. A practical answer would be to say something like, "Your silence is affecting me. Can we talk about what is happening?" This shows that you recognize the emotional impact of this attitude, but you are also willing to seek resolution. Also, remember that healthy relationships are built on transparency and honesty. If you realize that this silent manipulation persists, carefully evaluate the space that this person occupies in his life. Balanced relationships require direct communication and mutual respect. By applying these Stoic principles, you strengthen your ability to deal with people who use silence as a control tool, maintaining your emotional integrity intact. Sign: persistent negativity behavior that may indicate a bad person is persistent negativity, characterized by a constantly pessimistic view of life and situations. This type of individual tends to always see the negative side of things, dragging those around them to an emotional cycle of discouragement and frustration. The continuous presence of this toxic energy can affect its motivation, productivity, and general well-being. Imagine an environment where this person always responds with phrases like, "This will never work," or "Why try if everything will end up bad?" Although it may seem just an opinion, this constant attitude creates a heavy climate, making it difficult for any positive progress. Worse yet, it can influence your own perception, leading you to internalize this pessimism. Stoicism teaches us that although we cannot control the emotions or attitudes of others, we have full power on how we react to them. Instead of allowing this negativity to take care of your mental state, practice gratitude. Focus on positive aspects of the situation, even small. A practical answer would be to say something like, "I see another angle in this situation." This demonstrates that you are willing to maintain a balanced perspective without being dominated by external pessimism. Also, remember that healthy relationships are built in the reciprocity of positive energies. If you realize that this dynamic of negativity persists, carefully evaluate this person's impact on your life. It is not necessary to completely avoid these individuals, but limiting exposure can preserve their emotional health. By applying these Stoic principles, you strengthen your ability to deal with people whose negative energy threatens to consume your inner peace. Your emotional strength depends on how you choose to react, not the attitudes of others. We have reached the end of this video, but before we end it, we will recap the main learnings we explore together. We have identified 7 essential signs that indicate that you may be dealing with a bad or toxic person. False kindness, emotional exploitation, emotional reward control, lack of personal responsibility, constant over-exigence, silent manipulation, and persistent negativity. For each of these signs, we plunged into the principles of Stoicism to understand how we can deal with these situations in a practical, balanced, and resilient way. Stoicism teaches us that while we cannot control the behavior of others, we have complete power over our own reactions. This transformative perspective gives us valuable tools to protect our emotional energy, establish healthy limits, and act with assertiveness and self-confidence. Remember, you are not responsible for the behavior of others, but you are responsible for how to choose to deal with it. By applying this wisdom to your daily life, you not only protect yourself from negative influences, but also cultivate a more resilient and serene mindset. Here is a final message for you to take with you. Life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to it. This phrase, attributed to the Epictetus philosopher, perfectly summarizes the core of Stoicism. No matter how many toxic people you find along the way, control over your life will always be in your hands. The key is how you choose to answer. To further strengthen your emotional resilience, here are some quick tips that can be applied in your daily life. Inspiring Stoic phrases. Use these mantras to reflect and guide their decisions. You have power over your mind, not external events. Marco Aurelio. It's not what happens to you, but how do you react that matters. Epictetus. Difficulty strengthens the mind, just as work strengthens the body. Stoic daily exercise. Reserve 5 to 10 minutes a day to practice reflection. Ask yourself, what happened today that was out of my control? How do I react? Was it according to my values? What can I do tomorrow to act more wisdom? 3. Stoic breathing. When you feel emotional overload, practice breathing 4 to 7, 8. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. This will bring clarity and calm. If you like this video and believe it can help other people, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Leave in the comments which sign has resonated with you most and how you want to apply Stoicism in your life. Your experience can inspire other people. Remember, the choice is always yours. Until next time.